What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Mark and this is 360 Finance. In today's video, we're going to be talking about why big tech should not be broken up, specifically because of the Congress hearings in the past couple weeks. As most of you probably know, Facebook, Apple, Google, as well as Amazon's CEOs all testified in front of Congress and spoke on some very serious issues surrounding this new digital age. In today's video, we're going to talk specifically about those issues. We're going to talk about how they can potentially fix them. We're going to talk about what the government needs to do to help them out. And then I'm going to ultimately tell you why these companies do not need to be meddled with and how everything should stay as is while limiting their power in certain ways. If you guys do enjoy this content, please consider liking the channel as well as subscribing. About 97% of you that watch this content are not subscribed to the channel. Would love to see you guys hop on the train. The first company that I'm going to be talking about is Facebook, so let's go ahead and jump into that. So with Facebook, there's a couple different issues here. We'll talk about the antitrust ones first. What they talked about a lot, or what Zuckerberg got grilled on, was essentially the antitrust laws because of the Instagram acquisition back in 2012. And antitrust laws are basically when a monopolistic power, companies with so much market share, basically don't allow for competition via new incumbents because they're just so powerful. They control that market. And that's kind of what we're seeing with Facebook. They own 4, I believe, of the most used apps worldwide, which is Facebook, Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, as well as Instagram, not specifically in that order. Storytelling time. Back in 2012, Facebook bought Instagram for about $1 billion, and today it's basically valued over $100 billion. And the reason it was a little bit shady was because at the time, Instagram was just a company with about 13 employees, and there's essentially reports that the owner or CEO at the time kind of felt bullied into accepting Zuckerberg's offer, because if he didn't, Zuckerberg or Facebook would essentially make their life a living hell. It's a little bit of exercising your power and dominating the market that doesn't allow for new competition, and that's what essentially Zuckerberg got grilled on. In 2013, Evan Spiegel of Snapchat actually turned down Facebook's offer of $3 billion to buy out Snapchat. So a little bit of a similar story here, except we're seeing Evan Spiegel take a different route. He didn't take the money or didn't take the short-term gain. He decided he wanted to actually build his own company, and it's doing very well. Maybe it's a little bit challenging to compete against the likes of Facebook and Instagram and all the other social sites out there, but he took it a different route and basically trying to build his own company, and basically the opposite happened with Instagram a year earlier. If Facebook feels they have a competitor in the space, they can essentially just gobble them up and acquire them, which leads to less competition in the space and select number of people making massive decisions, aka Zuckerberg has tremendous power, and the whole point of these antitrust laws was to avoid that, stymieing the monopolistic competition so that people like Instagram can come and compete against the likes of Facebook. If Zuckerberg's power continues to grow limitless like we're currently seeing in the social media space, I think something definitely needs to be done. Maybe you don't need to break up Facebook or anything, but there needs to be some antitrust laws put in place, or at least enforced, so that Facebook doesn't remain basically like the only social media provider worldwide. The other issue with Facebook is the AntiConservative Bias, and this comes back to freedom of speech and all that. Basically, Facebook shouldn't be picking political sides, and there's numerous occasions that were cited by senators here where they basically censor conservative views, and I think that the government kind of needs to step in here and kind of make this decision for Zuckerberg. Zuckerberg's kind of thinks that they should not be arbiters of the truth online, because if you ask Zuckerberg or his company to basically fact check everything that every single person is saying online, you can't hire enough people to do that job, nor do you have the ability to fact check what everybody is saying online. There needs to be some sort of legislation, some sort of guideline here, because we're seeing Twitter basically take the opposite stance. If Twitter doesn't like what someone of power is saying online, they will actually censor them, they will fact check them, and we saw this when President Trump was talking about hydrochloroquine, and how it was a safe thing to ingest to thwart the coronavirus, when in fact in certain cases it's actually deadly. So my opinion in this case is, if there's immediate harm or danger that arises from people of influence saying things online, that the social media companies should actually step in. But this is a tremendous task, and you can't actually assign a moral compass to any every person, because everybody has, different views on various, let's say political, business issues worldwide. So, if you ask Facebook to be the arbiters of the truth, that doesn't bode well for the company. But I do think there needs to be some sort of government assistance or some sort of government guideline in this case that basically outlines that they're not liable for not being the arbiters of the truth. What we're seeing Jack Dorsey do with Twitter is when he's like fact-checking the president of the United States, you have people that are on the left wing that are saying this is good. You have people on the right wing that are saying, hey, you can't censor the president. So yeah, I think basically, my opinion, I completely agree with Zuckerberg. They should not be the arbiters of the truth and limit any sort of freedom of speech online. It's the internet. You shouldn't believe everything that you see on the internet, basically. Okay, so let's move on to Amazon now. So basically, Facebook and Amazon were probably the two companies that got grilled the most. You did see Google get grilled a little bit in there as well, but Apple kind of got off clean. So the issue with Amazon was their use of third-party seller data to basically support Amazon's own private label business. It essentially means that this allows for Amazon to price discriminate and strategically place their own products or private label business in an advantageous spot in terms of pricing as well as market positioning based on the data that they're accumulating from other businesses selling on their platform. Okay, this is wrong because it basically creates these unfavorable conditions for small business owners. So what I mean by this, let's say you're in the market to buy a broom, okay, and there's a $10 broom, there's a $20 broom, and then there's a $50 broom, okay? So you have cheap kind of in the middle, and then you have a higher priced. What Amazon will do is they basically have all this data about how much time people spend looking at each one, which one they ultimately purchase, and why they ultimately purchase it, and then that allows for Amazon to basically create their own private label products and undercut the competition based on the one that is basically being purchased the most. So let's say, for argument's sake, that the $20 broom is being purchased the most. What they're going to do is they're going to create a very similar broom with maybe slightly cheaper products and underprice them just so that they can undercut their competition and basically take market share and take dollars from small business owners that basically only sell these generic items. So what this is doing is this is indirectly hurting the middle class and makes the gap larger between the upper and the middle class, because all this money is basically going back to Amazon, aka Jeff Bezos, and you're taking it out of pockets of mom and pop shops that are kind of in the middle and having to use Amazon as a platform to sell their products because it's the main source of online activity or online purchasing activity. It's basically the only shop on the internet where you can guarantee there will be traffic, so they have to use them, they have to market through them, and that allows for Amazon to collect data on them and use it for their own purposes, basically. Now, I think that the use of user data is a concern for all these companies. Privacy is an important aspect of life that we've lost in the age of digital advertising. Amazon, in my opinion, should not be able to sell their own private label products in place of small business owners' generic products. They often can't compete with this mega giant in a space that is already profiting off them by listing their products on their site. As I said, Amazon's the main source of shopping online. Small businesses are forced to use them as an intermediary just to get their products sold, and so Amazon basically gets a slice of the pie and then via search and purchase data undercuts them and digs into their margins and in the process. So in my opinion, basically Amazon's private label should be eradicated. They should not be able to sell their own products basically by forcing small businesses to use their platform and then using that data to undercut them. So in my opinion, Amazon's private label business should basically be shut down. That's my solution to that problem. Okay, the next company we're talking about is Google. The main issue here is, again, surveillance and privacy and how all our private data is being used. So most people should know this by now, but their phones, computers, as well as laptops are all essentially a digital ID for them. If you're shopping for clothes online, you're going to receive ads for other apparel. If you're listening to certain podcasts or music online, you're going to be recommended similar experiences. If you're watching certain videos on YouTube, paying for certain subscriptions, everything is being tracked and sold via an underground digital marketplace. Even if you're in a private window, you're in incognito mode, it doesn't matter. Everything is tracked and sold to various people for various reasons, basically for the sake of advertising products to you. If you walk past a certain store or live in a certain neighborhood, you're basically assigned a socioeconomic status or stereotyped into what other people in that neighborhood are doing, purchasing, as well as their behavior in general. There's a very good documentary on this called The Great Hack, where this data was essentially used to put the current president of the United States into power. It's about a data analytics company known as Cambridge Analytica, exploiting the Google database and using this user data, sorting people into categories where they may or may not be influenced by what they see online, and then basically targeting them and trying to influence them to vote a certain way. So again, their monopolistic power is crushing their competition by identifying identifying threats via web surveillance. But at the end of the day, Google is probably one of the most important pieces of the puzzle when it comes to AI. The vast amount of user data they have alone will be the base of the pyramid for building AI. Google, I don't believe, should be broken up because they are North America first. And North America does need a leader in this space. And if we have any hopes of remaining a dominant continent or a dominant country, Google needs to be a major player in this stage. If we, Canada as well as the US hopes to remain in competition with global superpowers such as China and Russia. There's been said to also be an anti-conservative bias at Google as well. And again, I think this is something that needs to be probably eradicated by not discriminating on people's freedom of speech or what they believe. At the end of the day, businesses should be neutral when it comes to politics, and a lot of people, similar to Facebook and similar to Twitter, seem to think that Google has a very anti-conservative bias. Okay, and the last company we're talking about is Apple, and I don't have a ton of notes on Apple because Apple didn't really get grilled through the session. The issues with them are kind of similar to how their user data is being used, and that comes back to all the way back to the San Bernardino trials and how they wouldn't unlock an iPhone to potentially a mass murderer to gain information. Like they wouldn't open it up for the police in San Francisco or California, San Bernardino, wherever it was. At the end of the day, Apple basically got through unscathed. I'm not gonna spend a ton of time talking to Apple. I don't really have a ton of big takeaways from them. The big issue with them was whether or not they're fair to app developers, and I think that Tim Cook had a lot of good answers to what they were grilling him on. So good job to them. Okay, so basically the big takeaways from this 6-hour conference in front of Congress to me was the use of private user data, how it needs to be policed or restricted. I think at the end of the day, coming to the end of this hearing, there was no clear outcome as to how they're going to do that, but I think the government needs to intervene and put laws or antitrust laws in place about user data and how it's used and how it's policed. But at the end of the day, when you have 60, 70-year-old senators making decisions on these companies that are mainly run by millennials, I think we need a little bit of a younger crowd in the government to make these type of decisions because they understand the technologies at a much greater depth. The second main takeaway was these companies' behavior towards competitors, like we talked about with Facebook and Instagram, like we talked about with Amazon and their private label business, like we talked about with Google and how they basically use their dominant search engine to force everybody to pay them a tax if they want to get noticed online via advertising dollars. This needs to stop, and this is creating monopolistic power in the industry. All these companies operate within different industries, but they treat their competitors the same way by basically trying to crush them before they even get started. And that's something that needs to be monitored carefully. I think the acquisition of Instagram was a little bit shady. I think how Google uses their private user data to force people to pay them a tax if you want to get noticed online is absurd. And I think the fact that Amazon has a private label business which they undercut small business owners is also absurd. I think all three of these things need to stop, or there needs to be legislation or some sort of enforcement of the antitrust laws. The third main issue was the political bias, and at the end of the day, my opinion is that these businesses should be politic neutral. They shouldn't be anti-conservative. They just shouldn't be pro-left wing. They should be completely neutral, and all their policies should basically outline or guide them to operate this way. Okay, at the end of the day, these companies are the elite of the elite. They have fostered business innovation as well as growth all across North America. AI is undoubtedly going to be coming from these companies, and I think all these companies will play a key role in how AI is rolled up as well as constructed. Amazon brings together consumers and sellers. The consumers ultimately make the decision as to what they want to buy, but profit sharing could be a solution for them. I don't believe that Facebook should be the arbitrators of the truth. Social media websites should be exempt from being purchased by Facebook or up-and-coming companies like Instagram, which have 13 employees, and get bought out immediately, even though more people use Instagram than Facebook these days, is just an example of how Facebook might have abused their power a bit. And then Google surveillance indirectly brings together consumers and sellers, but I do believe that they are a North America first company. There should be some sort of opt-in solution as to whether all your data can be used or sold on this underground digital marketplace, but at the end of the day, it's about how they enforce that and how they police that, because that's going to be pretty difficult to do regardless of what you implement. And then Apple, just keep making awesome products. You guys didn't really do anything wrong. I mean, there's some issues about how you guys treat developers. But anyways, that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you guys did enjoy. If you did enjoy, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more awesome content. Like the video if you got some value out of it. And I will see you guys in the next video. Peace out.
Young age, learn how to get paid. Big stage, long way from session A. Big wave, he gon' have to get saved.